This is a very special edition of MPTF Influencers. I am your host, Courteney Bailey. My guest today, almost 30 years in the motion picture business, involved in production, marketing, distribution, a couple of little films that won Academy Awards that we might know about: Braveheart, Forrest Gump, and Titanic. This woman is absolutely incredible, has inspired me greatly in my life and thousands of others. In 1980, she became the first woman to have a major film studio when she was appointed the president of 20th Century Fox. Later, as an independent producer, produced over 200 films. She returned to the executive ranks to run Paramount Pictures and began an unprecedented tenure of over 12 years. What she does now, though, is really incredible, and she has dedicated her life to philanthropy. She runs and founded the Sherry Lansing Foundation, which is dedicated to raising awareness for cancer research, health, public education. One of my favorites, and I love how it's phrased, encore career opportunities, which is so beautiful. 9 honorary degrees, at least from what I could count. Countless other accolades. I can't even list them all. We don't have enough time. And here's our guest, Sherry Lansing. Thank you so much.
Hi, Courtney. I'm so happy to be here. I really am. I'm so dedicated to the work of the Motion Picture and Television Fund, and I'm just honored to be here. So thank you for including me in this talk.
You are very welcome. We are very grateful. And, we could spend hours. You've done countless interviews, but today we really want to focus on how you have dove into MPTF so wonderfully and with such vigor recently. But tell me, I'm always curious about the origin story. When and how did you find out about MPTF?
Well, actually, I have a very, very long history with MPTF. When I was 35 years old, I was the president of production at 20th Century Fox. And I got a call from the most respected man in the industry, a man named Lou Wasserman. And I'm sure all of you on the campus know of him. And he said, there's this wonderful thing that the industry does, and I'd like you to co-chair it with me. And what he was talking about at the time was the permanent charities, where each of us gave a small donation out of our paycheck to the Motion Picture and Television Fund. And I was so honored to be called by Lou Wasserman. And he was such an idol of mine and such a hero that I immediately said yes. And so I co-chaired with him the permanent charities fundraising activities. And at the time, it was something that every studio did, and every person who was employed by a studio gave a donation, whatever percentage they wanted to, of their check. There was no pressure to do it, except everybody did it, because everybody knew that this was almost our moral obligation to take care of our own. So that was my beginning. I'm now going to be 78 in about 2 weeks, so that's how long I've been involved. So think about that. But my involvement was always there, and my respect was always there. But it's actually in the last few years that the intensity of my involvement changed. So I would always get the call from Jeffrey Katzenberg asking me for my donation. I think there's a villa, all the things that those of us who are lucky enough to be able to do want to do. And then I would visit the campus. I've been there many, many, many times, and I was incredibly impressed by the work that the campus is doing and in awe, and saw a lot of my friends there, and was happy that they were so happy, and happy that they were receiving such excellent care, and more than excellent care, that they had a community of friends, which was equally important. So, as I've always felt, isolation is one of the greatest problems facing our aging population. But then several years ago, I had a very personal experience. And that was a dear friend of mine who had been very successful in his career. But I guess the best way to put it is he lived and is continuing to live longer than his money. His money ran out. Now, that's not unusual, because if you live past a certain age and you made a very, very good living, the chances are your money will run out because when I was growing up, we all thought if we lived to 60, that was 110. Then I raised it to 70, then I raised it to 80, and now I hope to live to 100. So I think this is a common problem facing people in the industry. And I watched my friend, who is just one of the most wonderful people in the world, and I watched him struggle with this. Of course, he downsized and lived in a very modest way. And then he started borrowing money from people. And I think because of that humiliation, he started to maybe drink too much, maybe do pills. I don't know the extent of it. And then he was lost. I mean, there's just so much that your friends can do for you before you really can't help someone anymore. And I remember saying to this individual, I think you should look at the motion picture home. And he was very resistant to it. He didn't know what it was.
Right.
And so then as everything got more and more difficult, and as eventually he was facing homelessness, this individual went to the motion picture home. And I saw a miracle. And that's the only way that I can describe it, as a miracle. Suddenly, he didn't have to worry about money. Suddenly, his dignity was back. The doctors looked at him, took him off of all the medication that he was doing on his own. And suddenly, my friend was back. My friend was back from, 30 years ago. He was lively. He was cheerful. He knew everything that was going on in the world. He had a ton of friends. And I actually saw personally that you could not just change a life, but you literally were saving lives. And that's when, I think it's, 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it is, that the motion picture home became my most important charity. And it's something that now I, prioritize and hope to get a lot of other people involved. So that's my story.
That is fantastic. I'm actually going to jump, speaking of Leading Lady, one of my favorite books, of course. But I want to ask you, Sherry, about, we'll talk about our 100th, but I want to ask you about your sense of philanthropy. There's so many, you said something very beautiful, that those who can and are able to, to give back and to support those. You said something in your book that I want to read, and I want to know where this sense of philanthropy came from. You said you saw how one person could change a whole life, how if you committed yourself to help, you could touch their lives forever. And that is very much about the mission of taking care of each other and living and aging well with dignity and purpose, like you were chatting about. But where does that sense of philanthropy come from in your life?
From my mother. I think my mother was my greatest role model. We were not a wealthy family. We also were not poor. We were, I think, a average middle class family. But I saw my mother, whenever she would see somebody that was less fortunate than her, she would never, ever pass without offering a helping hand. If she had a little money, she would give it to them. If she could help them by working in programs that helped people, like she would have been a volunteer at the home. I know that, my mother used to always say, there before the grace of God go I. And so I learned from her that if you were lucky enough, and it is, of course, hard work, but it's also luck. I mean, it just is. If you were lucky enough to have a big hit movie or a company that worked, or you were lucky enough, to be successful, you had a moral obligation to help other people. And I saw that in her. And I don't think it's just about giving money. I mean, I think the volunteers are every bit as important as the people that write checks. I think yes. We all do what we can. And to me, that gift that my mother instilled in me from the time I was a child is one of the things that I love her the most for.
Beautiful. So recently we celebrated our 100th anniversary, and we've been chatting with you for a while. As you mentioned, Jeffrey Katzenberg has stepped down as our board of directors, and it's that beautiful evolution, like Lou handed it off to him. And now it's time, and it's so important at MPTF for those external voices and advocates to speak on our behalf. Helps us out tremendously. So you, and speaking of the Wassermans, you and Casey Wasserman chaired our 100th anniversary celebration, which was so special. And you jumped in with such vigor. Why was that appealing? Why say yes to that role?
Well, I would say yes to anything that you asked me to do. So let me start with that.
Okay, good. We have that on camera. Wonderful.
No, I mean,
You've said that. Yeah.
We've been hosting, gatherings and everything. Jeffrey did an extraordinary job. And all of us first are following in Lou's footsteps, and now we're following in Jeffrey's footsteps, and we're going to follow Casey's footsteps as well. I'm just honored to be a part of it. I mean, what could be more important than taking care of the people that are in your own business? My success, I didn't do this alone. Every movie that I did, there was hundreds of people that were there, and not everybody is as fortunate. So the idea that in some small way I could help take care of the people that helped me is an honor. And when I think about the future, I really want it to be restored to what Lou talked about. I'm not suggesting that we go back to the permanent charities, but I am suggesting that everybody who's in the motion picture industry give something. It can be $1. I don't really care. Or give up your time. But we're the only industry that takes care of our own. So it's just such an honor. And I also, want to change the image of the home. Because
talk to me about that. We do.
The home is not some place that you go to because you have no place else to go. The home is a place that you go to if you're lucky enough and privileged enough to get into it. Because it's not just about finances. Of course, if you don't have any money, the home, lets you in and provides your health care and your living expenses and your food. But if you have money, you pay. But the one thing that the home does is you're not lonely. You have a community. And that community, as I said, I think, a few minutes ago, isolation is one of the biggest problems facing people as they age. So many of your friends are no longer here, or they're not what they were before. And suddenly you have a bunch of pals. I was listening in, the thing before, talking about Jaws and, talking about, all the films. I mean, I found it fascinating, So I hope that, with the help of the people that are running studios, streaming devices, whatever you want to call, and philanthropists, we can really give the home the financial resources that it needs and make it a place that everyone feels privileged to go to.
Absolutely. And you're right. It's about giving what you can, but giving of your time. If you can't donate, you can advocate, you can volunteer. There are so many ways.
Exactly.
I mean, even just being on this virtual platform was born out of that isolation. Our residents and our staff couldn't be together. They had to physically distance, but we don't like social distance. We don't like that term because we don't have to socially distance. And at least like you saw in the programming, we can come together and provide joy. But let's go back to and then I want to ask about the younger people and more about the image of MPTF. But the 100th anniversary, you were there. I saw you had a bunch of great run-ins with some great people. And at that pre-reception where we honored our presenting sponsors and our host committee, which even the ones that couldn't attend because there's 1,000 things going on, just jumped in to support you and Casey, us, Jeffrey and Marilyn receiving the silver medallion, which was beautiful. But did you have fun? Tell me about that night.
Greatest time. And I thought the show was absolutely spectacular. And hearing from a lot of the residents, inspired me more than I can possibly tell you. And I was thrilled with the turnout because almost every head of the studio or a streaming device came. I was so happy to reconnect with people that I haven't seen for years. There was a sense of joy and celebration. 100 years is something to celebrate. Yeah. And with that 100 years, when you think of the number of people, and as I said, not just that their lives are better, but some of them have been saved. That's an amazing thing. And so the show, when it would focus on, some of you who are listening are some of the people that moved me the most. When you would tell your stories, I was moved to tears, and it made me more committed than ever.
It was a very emotional night, that's for sure. Between the performances and the stories, like you said, I think I went between laughing and crying and laughing and smiling and gratitude the entire show. I know you said...
I felt exactly the same way. And I think that you recorded it so everyone will get to see it. It's a fantastic show. I mean, it's just wonderful. And you know, it highlights the work. It highlights the people who are living and have their own stories, their own narratives to tell, which are just extraordinarily moving.
Absolutely. And we've done this a little at your house because there's always food in an event, but it was pretty special to have those 4 celebrity chefs that Billy Harris brought. I saw you walking around. That was a really fun. It was so good.
The food was delicious. I wish everybody could have been there with us. The food was amazing. And I loved eating it and sampling all these wonderful things. But mostly, I loved reconnecting with people who I hadn't seen. And I have to say, as wonderful as the reception was, it's the stories that were told by people who live in the home that I will never forget and that affected me so much.
So you talked about the image and about the image of the home, but also about the support that we give in the community. I've heard you and many others talk about, we have to be more relevant. And as we go into this second century, we have to reach the younger people. And, the payroll pledge program you're talking about, that sense of like your alma mater, there's a lot of great things to support. I think we all know we're living in pretty interesting times right now, and there's a lot of things to support. But what would you tell to the kind of younger population? Actually, age isn't really a factor, but those who don't know us, why should they? And I guess 2 parts. How can we, MPTF, be more proactive to get out there? Because it's a challenge. And then what can the community do?
So I think that the younger generation just doesn't know enough yet. They haven't visited the home. I think if we can get them to visit the campus, they will be ever. They are also just beginning to be successful. And so a sense of philanthropy has to be instilled in them. And I think it's important that we reach out to some leaders in the younger generation and make them part of our effort and invite them over. And honestly, if you're lucky enough to be successful, we have to point to them the number of people that worked on their films or television shows or whatever that worked with them. And because of them, these younger generation people are successful. And not all of them are going to have enough money to continue to live unless we have the home. And it's not just, as you said, living. It's all the things that we do for social services, all the things that you do with financial aid. And I think it's exposure. Unfortunately, it was embedded in us from Lou, who was the leader of our industry. Then Jeffrey picked up that baton and took it to a new level. And now I'm counting on everybody, Casey, and obviously I'm going to work very hard to take it to the new level and to reach a new generation as well.
And your voice has been heard by so many. And you mentioned you've opened up your home and we've been able to bring in new people and to fundraise, but it's not the fundraising. I feel really special at MPTF. It will come. We know it will come. It's really about sharing that sense of mission and getting people involved. And I love the instilling of the sense of philanthropy. So Nija Kirkendall, who is the next generation of leaders she's at Netflix now, and we're going to host something at your home and bring in that younger population and really instill upon them. We don't want them to be afraid that it's just about giving money. It's just about, like you said, that sense of belonging and that moral obligation and
helping. I mean, there's lots of, money is of course wonderful that you can write a check, but that's not necessary. We need people to volunteer their time. We need people to spread the word. We need people. Yeah. I remember when I first started my foundation, and, obviously I couldn't afford to support all the programs that I was interested in. I don't have that kind of wealth. And so I would go out and try and raise money. And I remember being really frustrated one day about a program that I had. And I'd gone to this multi-billionaire, and he had given me a very, very small donation. And I was really disappointed. And then one of the people in the organization I was working for said, no, don't look at it that way. He gave you $1. Next year, maybe he'll give you $2, and eventually he'll give you $10. So it was like,
start small and it'll grow.
Start small and it'll grow. And I think that what we need to do with the younger generation is I'm less worried about the dollars. I want them to become involved. I want them to visit the home. I want them to visit the people. I want them to see who's there. I mean, most of the younger generation is in awe of the residents. You've done so many wonderful pieces of entertainment. They want to meet you. They want to know. And once it starts there, it'll just build year after year after year and just become like breathing, something that you're going to do. And I really do think it is a moral obligation that we have. If we're not going to take care of our own, who is?
Who is? Yeah.
And I'm also very proud that I think we're the only industry that has something like this.
As far as we know, we talk about it all the time. Everyone should have this similar sense of take care of your own. There are very few jobs where you just do it by yourself. Maybe a heart surgeon. Even then, they have a team around them. But
no, the heart surgeon had to go to medical school. He has a team. In the surgery, he does not do it by himself. And he had teachers. He had this, and I think it's a privilege, to be able to help. And I think I always used to feel this way. Started when I was young. That if I worked, I worked in after-school programs on the south side of Chicago where people, were less fortunate. And I remember thinking every time I would leave, I got way more out of it than they did. I just had such a wonderful feeling, of getting to know these people and of in some small way helping to make their lives better made me feel better.
Right. And with the next generation, you mentioned these are people, a lot of them just starting out in their careers. So the mentorship and the guidance and wisdom you can get from the people who live on our campus or who don't live on our campus, who are veterans of the industry and still working, like so many of our residents are. But it's also that networking together around a shared purpose and around that sense of philanthropy. So, for all the young generation, it's hard to think about giving money when you're still struggling and trying to achieve your goals, but come together because we've seen from the big events to the small events, projects and collaborations and like-minded people coming together for MPTF that absolutely affects their career as well.
I've often said, I don't think philanthropy is about money. It's about good ideas. So the younger generation is going to have ideas that I won't have, because they're looking at it from a different point of view. They certainly will have many ideas about social media that I don't have, So I think actually, even if they don't give us money, they can help us in fundraising too.
Absolutely. Give or get. And making an introduction is a huge help.
Exactly. And then I just think, when they get to be my age, it'll just be part of their life.
If we can be so lucky. And happy early birthday, by the way.
Thank you. It feels good to reach this age, and I'm very grateful. When I was growing up, I guess this seemed like 110, and I didn't even think I would make it. And now I feel like, I want to live to 100. So that's okay.
Oh, you absolutely will. Absolutely will. So I can't wait to even just see the great things we're going to do together. And it's so exciting. Let me flip it. You inspire so many people, myself included, so many of us who are listening.
You're very kind.
Well, it's pretty easy to say, and what an honor to chat with you and know your team and your huge heart. But who inspires you?
Well, a lot of people. Every day people inspire me. When I was growing up, I idolized Martin Luther King. And I, just thought, my God, he is so eloquent and he never gives up and he fights for social justice. And Zelensky today, I see his extraordinary bravery. But it doesn't have to be a big person. I mean, people inspire me who live their lives quietly. Teachers inspire me. Nurses inspire me. It's people that care about something other than themselves and a nurse or a scientist does that. And so I'm inspired every day by somebody, and it can, people who battle diseases inspire me, that their courage. There's so many people that inspire me. So it's not to, of course, Martin Luther King or Zelensky. That's easy to say,
Right. But it's the everyday heroes.
It's the everyday heroes, the people that just quietly go about their lives facing enormous obstacles and overcoming them with dignity and with courage. And they inspire me. I have a girlfriend who's battling cancer. She inspires me every day with her courage and her dignity and her desire to beat this and not complain. So every day you meet somebody that inspires you.
We have a shared friend in Miss Valerie Kondo's field. And when you talk about your friend battling cancer, we'll be praying for her. And when Val said something to me that changed my life. And it was something when she was battling breast cancer, changing the word have to get to.
Yeah.
You don't have to pay bills. You get to pay bills. No matter what it is, you get the opportunity to live and breathe and do that thing.
Yes.
And it's perspective and life-changing completely.
She's one of the most inspirational people in the world, and she's inspired so many people through her own life and the students that she's taught. But
absolutely,
yeah.
Well, and you talking about everyday heroes, and I encourage people as they get to know MPTF. We've brought staff to your home before. They were part of the 100th celebration. They're part of Real Stories, Real Lives. Our residents and our recipients of service, they're incredible. Our volunteers, but truly get to know our staff, our social workers, our nurses, our doctors work tirelessly to help people. And like your friend who you mentioned, that was a team of people that just wrapped their arms around them.
And I know that the story that I described is happening dozens of times every day.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just my personal experience, but I know there was nothing unusual about it. It wasn't a rare experience. It's a common experience, and it happens over and over and over again. And that's one of the reasons I'm so dedicated to the mission of MPTF.
Let me ask you a Mary Pickford question. She's one of our founders and such a luminary in the industry, and very much like you, used her voice and her platform for good and to stand up and say, no, we're in this industry because of hundreds of others that are helping us. Was she someone that you looked up to or were inspired by?
Of course, but I never knew her. She was actually before me.
yes, of course.
But she was a strong woman. She was a leader before there were other women. And yes, Of course I did, and I looked up to many of the women that came before me. Gloria Steinem, was one of my heroes, was fortunate enough to meet, but there's so many people that preceded us that gave us the opportunities that we have. And I'm so grateful to them too.
Fantastic. I know we don't have too much time and hopefully we'll be able to have you back, but do you have time for a couple really hardball questions?
Okay, sure. I'm happy.
You said you'd say yes to anything, so I'm going to throw the really hard stuff at the end. And I think Jen likes to come back on this segment as well if she's around. But Sherry, this is really, really difficult, especially for you, who I know has worked on so much. You watch literally everything I've ever asked you about. You've seen it. So what is your favorite film of all time?
Oh, wow. Well, first of all, I could never answer that because I have so many favorites. So, okay, I'll play it safe. And I'll say my husband is a director, Billy Friedkin, and he directed, my favorite film he directed was The Sorcerer. And I saw The Sorcerer when I was reading scripts for $5 an hour at the National Theater in Westwood. I didn't know Billy then. And I thought it was the greatest movie I'd ever seen. And I thought, wow, if I can just carry the water or the coffee on that movie, I'll feel really good. So.
I love that you saw that before you met him, because you didn't meet until later in life, right?
Much later in life. Much later.
Jen, you want to ask the next one?
Yes. We are the Motion Picture and Television Fund. So we have been asking all of our guests, what's your favorite television series as well?
So that I also can't answer. The reason I can't answer it is not, because of any reason, except that I watch so much. And literally, if I was to answer, especially during COVID, I must have 20 things that I was obsessed with and telling people to watch. I just finished something that I loved. So I'm just going to say that. But even though I just finished it and I recommend it to everybody, there's 50 other things I could name. But the one that I finished was The Staircase. And Jen, you're shaking your head. So I want you who are listening to first watch the documentary. And then you're going to say, I don't need to watch the dramatization because I saw the documentary. And they'd be completely wrong because the dramatization after the first 2 episodes picks up where the documentary left off with the most shocking revelations you'll ever see. So I just finished that. So that's why I said that one. But in 3 days, I couldn't tell you what I just finished next. So we're so lucky that during COVID, and not just during COVID, but during life, that we have these wonderful entertainment. I mean, I just loved Elvis this weekend. I just thought it was genius. And I love Top Gun. I've seen Top Gun 3 times, Elvis twice. I'm sure I'll see Elvis 3 times as well. I love those 2 movies.
Beautiful.
Can I ask something that's a little still related?
Sure.
I agree with you about The Staircase, but there's also a show that is nonfiction that I recommend to everybody. And if you haven't had the chance to just sit back and unwind with this, cannot recommend it highly enough. Somebody Feed Phil.
I love Somebody Feed Phil. Oh my God.
We love that show.
Oh my God. Well, you have to get Phil on the show. So to be honest with you, Phil Rosenthal is one of my best friends in the whole world. Phil and Monica. I'm going to send him an email right now and tell him that you said it.
Please send him. Tell him. Yeah, tell her.
He's been on the show with us.
Oh,
and
it's wonderful. We watch it all the time. And he is truly what he is on the show. He is, first of all, one of the funniest people in the entire world. Second, he's just the kindest human being. And he's the most philanthropic. He just does everything very modestly, very quietly. Oh my God, I can't believe you said that. Yes, I've watched it all the time. Yeah.
The most disappointing thing about this season is that it's 5 episodes.
I know. It's so good. It's so good.
We do have a ton of content, but I am getting sick of the things that I love that are not enough shows. I want to see more. I want them to continue on, especially when you binge. It's a weird feeling when you're done. You're like,
it's like a member of your family died. It really is. It's like you knew them and you're so close to them. I love Yellowstone. I mean, I could just go on and on. There's so much that I loved.
A very sweet show that I just binged completely and started. It's got so many ties to MPTF, which kind of like a start through Greg Berlanti and Marty Bowen and Wick Godfrey, Temple Hill, but love Victor.
Oh, I'm going to see that. No, I love it.
It's phenomenal. It tackles great issues. It's beautifully written. It is filled with kindness. I highly, highly recommend.
I definitely. Thank you. Thank you.
And that's derived from Love, Simon. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. I saw Love, Simon and thought it was great.
Yeah.
It carries on the story beautifully.
I'm going to step away, but I do want to add my personal thanks for all that you have done. And I know that the work that we do as the crew supporting the residents' visions and their creativity, it's sometimes very hard, but it's always very rewarding. And I shared with the crew that the wonderful thing that you wrote in that email, and it meant a lot to everybody. So,
well, it's true. The work that you do is extraordinary. And just as I said, just before we started this, I was listening to your last panel, and it was great. It was absolutely great. So thank you, Jennifer, and your whole team for everything that you do.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, Courteney, I'm stepping away. Thank you for those answers, Sherry.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll see you back here soon.
It's a pleasure to be here. You know, I love talking to you. I'm available to do anything I can to help. And I'm coming out to the campus soon to visit. So hopefully I'll see all of you and all of my friends that are living there as well. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Sherry. We just cannot thank you enough for your time, for your heart, your energy and enthusiasm. And I can't wait to see you again. Can't wait to have you on campus, do more with you. It's going to be a great ride, and everyone just get involved. I think that's our message today.
That's right.
That just do something.
That's right. Just do something. And we welcome you. We need you, and you will get more out of it than you can possibly imagine. And thank you, Courteney, for your leadership. You've been wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a perfect way to end it, just to get involved, get to know us, and we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Look forward to seeing you in person soon on the campus.